Join us right now on the Trump line is Donald Trump, President and CEO of the Trump Organization. Good morning to you, Donald.
Good morning.
Well, I know that you were watching what was happening in Washington and also on Wall Street. What's your perspective? What happened?
Well, it's the greatest television I think I've ever witnessed, better than Super Bowls, better than anything else. And, you know, what is going on is something that's very interesting. It's called free enterprise. Now, I guess I like, and nobody really knows the answer to it because it may be right, it may be wrong. I guess probably it's better to approve, but there are a lot of things having to do with the silver lining. Number one is oil. Oil will drop like a rock, and this is what should happen. You have these guys in OPEC setting oil prices that are totally phony prices, and frankly, oil is the bloodstream of this country, more important than interest rates, more important than anything. And every time, do you ever notice when they announce the bailouts going forward, everybody's in agreement, oil prices go up.
Yeah.
Now, as soon as they announce that, oil prices go up. So it sucks out the blood. Every time we do something, it sucks out the blood. Now, yesterday when they announced, it's not going to happen, oil dropped $10 a barrel. Now, oil could go down to 20, 25, 30. It could, if this doesn't happen. That's the good thing. Somebody, regardless of what happens, somebody has to be able to speak to OPEC so they understand what they're talking to. Because, frankly, if oil goes up, when this plan is approved, if it's approved, I guarantee you one thing, oil will go up like a rocket ship. And somebody has to talk to those folks in a very stern manner.
Yeah. Right. I don't know what's going to work, and the talking to hasn't worked yet. But, Donald, I'm wondering right now.
Who talks to him? Nobody talks to him.
Well, we know the president went over to Saudi Arabia.
Yeah, and he wraps his arm around the head of Saudi Arabia. He puts his arm around the guy. The guy didn't even want to be touched by him, frankly. He wraps his arm around him. You have nobody talking. Look, Bush went over there and kissed their ass. It was terrible.
All right, just getting back to
this. How do you really feel?
Donald, you don't have
I think he's a great president.
You don't have an opinion. I know you're pulling for John McCain, but we'll talk about that in a second. But Donald, do you have an opinion on whether this bailout would be a positive for America?
Well, I can tell you this. There are a lot of people that are against it. There are a lot of people that sort of sit back on the sidelines. I'm buying things at discounts, and that's the way it should work. Why is the government taking on the bad loans? Why aren't they taking on some of the good loans? You know, they're basically taking over the bad loans from the banks. You know,
right.
Bad loans are bad loans. It's pretty tough to work out bad loans.
Right.
So you're going to have government officials making deals to sell bad loans? Now, one thing is going to happen, corruption. Another thing's going to happen, perhaps incompetence. I'd rather have the big boys at Goldman Sachs and Morgan Stanley and these guys that are very, very tough, smart guys. I'd rather have them making the deals.
Absolutely.
So let me ask you this, Donald, because there's been a lot of fear put out there about the fact that if this thing doesn't pass, then our economy is going to be the next depression. Your feelings about that?
You know what? We need a cleansing action. You know, it's really called a cleansing action. And if you look overnight at what happened in Europe and Asia, nothing. It wasn't so bad. I really thought, perhaps they would collapse because as we go, to a large extent, so do they. But you look at Asia, you look at Europe, there was no real big problem. It went down a little bit, but the banks went down 5%.
Right.
There wasn't a calamity.
Yeah.
So, there is a cleansing action. And again, part of the cleansing action, and I think a very big part, is you're cleansing the oil process. You're cleansing the OPEC process because these guys sit around a room and they create a phony oil. And frankly, no matter what happens, if oil's at $100 a barrel or at $150, which it recently was, nothing's going to work.
Sure. If you're just joining us, folks out there in TV land, we're talking on the phone to Donald Trump about his perspective on what happened with the bailout bill and its impact on Wall Street. Donald, one of the things is right now, if you talk to people in small businesses, and you know this because you're in big business, it's hard to get credit right now.
That's right.
Because the banks, a lot of them have made so many stupid loans to people who couldn't pay them back. There's not a lot of money out there.
That's right. And maybe we'll go through a period where credit is very hard to get. I mean, credit's been hard to get before. This isn't the first time. The problem was credit was so... When I'd build a building like 2 or 3 years ago, I'd ask for X dollars, and the banker would say, I won't give it to you, but I'll give you more. I say, excuse me? They were forcing me to take more money than I even asked for.
Because it was so cheap.
They'd reject me at the $200 million, but at $300 million, no, because the bankers made commissions on the amount of money they lent. These guys would make, it had no idea whether, it didn't matter whether it was a good loan or a bad loan. If they lent $200 million, they got X dollars. If they lent $300 million, they made more. Yeah. So the bankers would make commissions. It was crazy. You know, years ago, I had an uncle, a great uncle, Uncle William. He worked for the Bank of Manhattan. He was paid like $12,000 a year. He was a mortgage broker. Never made a bad mortgage. He'd give people mortgages on houses, and he got a salary. These guys today, they took pieces of deals. Mm-hmm. So it's a crazy thing. So,
Donald, does this play into the fact that guys like you and people on the inside said they knew something bad was going to happen, like they didn't know when it was happening, but they knew there was something not right with this whole process?
Well, if you listen to your good friend Neil Cavuto, whose show I did yesterday, he made the statement that the only one 2 years ago that predicted a depression was Donald Trump. And that's because I saw the lending practices. I saw what was going on. I felt, how long can this continue? I was amazed, frankly, that it continued so long. But he said last night that I was the only one that predicted it. I said you're going to have... Now, they can intervene. They can do a lot of artificial things, but they're artificial. And, you know, I heard the quote. It's like building a big tower on top of a bad foundation. Maybe we should cleanse out that foundation. Maybe we should let oil go down to $20 a barrel, which is where it should be, frankly, and they'll still make plenty of money. Look, they have accumulated the greatest wealth ever. By the way, they suffer greatly because all of the stock and all of the companies that they're buying with that oil money, let me tell you, they suffer more than anybody, and maybe they should suffer.
Right, Donald.
Right. Let me ask you this, Donald, with regard to regulation. Because Barack Obama is going to say, well, John McCain and the Republicans, they deregulated everything, and look where that got us. Where do you fall on that?
Well, I think the biggest mistake is mark-to-market. Every month, every year.
What does that mean?
Mark-to-market, where they buy something, they buy a building or they buy an asset, and then they have to continuously state what that asset. And if the economy is terrible, they have to restate. If they got rid of mark-to-market, and I believe they should get rid of it permanently, but if they got rid of it for a while, you wouldn't even have this problem.
Yeah. Hey, Donald, we know you got to go very shortly. And by the way,
we never have to go when I'm with you. This is a very, very powerful show.
Sweet
Thank
talker.
you. I think he's talking to you, Steve.
I love you people, and I do watch you every morning. Go ahead.
And we appreciate that. John McCain's going to be on this program about an hour and a half from now.
Right.
He's probably watching. What's your advice on how John McCain can take a leadership role at this time?
Well, I think he has taken a leadership role. It seems that what Nancy Pelosi said was very, very infuriating to a lot of different people. And I think John McCain has taken a leadership role. And I can tell you, if he's elected president, I really believe he's going to be a great president. But this is a very, very tough hurdle. This is a very tough problem we're in. And it really cements Bush's legacy because he was a failure at every single aspect of government, but he had a good economy. Now at least he can go out as a total failure.
Well, I know you haven't.
And I know you people hate that because you love Bush.
No, but you haven't been a supporter for a while. But in terms of Hank Paulson, do you know him? Do you like the way he's handled it?
I think he's a very smart guy. I think he's handled it probably as well as you can handle it. This is what he wants to do. He's probably right. It probably should pass. But even if it passes, it may not work. And you have to remember that. This is a very, very tricky subject. This is more complicated than sending missiles up to the moon. This is very tricky stuff. And to a large extent, I hate to say it, it's trial and error. But if it gives the country and if it gives the world confidence, the word confidence is very important, then I think probably it should be done.
This is trickier than picking the winner for The Apprentice. Donald Trump.
Much tougher, I agree.
Yeah, we thank you very much for joining us on the Horn.
Thank you very much.
Now go run your empire.
Back to business.
All right. Thanks a lot, Donald.
All right, 11 minutes after the hour. We're going to have Jack Welch coming up.